primary tool that we have, which is a personality assessment tool, affects what we care about and how we communicate. So for example, if we're talking about sales, right, the same car has different values to different people. Some people may appreciate the flashiness and the status of it. Some people may appreciate the reliability of it. Some people may appreciate the power. Same car, different values. So it's very much the same in the case that we're trying. Same case, different values to different people. Some people are very concerned with the fact that a rule was broken. Some people would be very forgiving of someone breaking a rule if there's good reason for it. Some people can really sympathize with the social effects of injuries, of physical or mental limitations. And other people aren't as driven by that. They want to see numbers. I wasn't going to push it too hard. But for the people that I had on there that were rule followers, that cared about exactly what the rules were, I was going to give them that tool or that argument to make in the liberation. But to the individual that is not as much of a rule follower, what I'm going to talk to them about is the fact that my client didn't put out the warning triangles to the rear of a semi all 200 feet. Because can you imagine this guy out there in the middle of 95, raining? He's gone 100 feet, another 120, and now 140. I mean, at some point, you need to be careful. You got to get out of the road, right? And that person is going to be more understanding of my client's decision not to go the whole 200 feet. 160 is enough, and I'm going to get back into the safety of my tractor. So you also have to know in your case what jives better with each personality style, right? So when we're talking about radiology and, whether this was a herniation or a bulge, it wasn't much an issue in this case, but that's someone that I want to present that to the person that's more technical, typically someone that's objective on the task focused and non-assertive. Right? They're going to take in, they're going to care about the little details. They're not just focused on the bottom line. Because what happens is they take that, they value that, they can also communicate that better than someone else would. So my plan or strategies that then in jury deliberations, they come with their strong points and their strong ways to argue and what they care about, armed with what is helpful to me. So this expert relied heavily on his ACTAR certification. So in the direct examination, my expert asked him, now, did you ever get some certifications and other than just being a professional engineer licensed by however many states? Oh, yeah. And tell me about that. Well, I got this certification. I'm a brake inspector. What about ACTAR? ACTA? Oh, yeah. I've done that one. Yeah. Well, what'd you have to do? Oh, it's like a weekend test, I think I did. And did you keep it up? Yeah, just doing what I need to do for an engineer, I get more than enough credits, to keep that up. But that I don't even put that on my resume. So, that's all the defense reconstructionist really relied on in terms of his, objective qualification to be an engineer or to be a reconstructionist at trial. But anyways, I say that to say this. He then gives his opinion. They're very broad. He doesn't go through any of the detailed analysis that my engineer went through. And we made sure he did it live, with a pen and paper in front of the jury. And then in closing, I turned to the youngest juror we had, which is a 21, 22-year-old guy that just moved over here from Colorado, who just graduated from engineering school. And after going through some of those things, I said, you have more, Mr. Police, you have more engineering experience than he does. And they all laughed and they appreciated it. And he was nodding along with me as I'm going over the analysis, So it's those personal connections that you establish with them that draws them in. We had 8 jurors on sitting, but only 6 get to go back. And the day before this happened, our first juror had a medical emergency and she could no longer be in the jury. So number 7 now becomes number 6. And who is he? That's Mr. Cummins, a truck driver here in town, that wasn't going to sit and deliberate, but got to hear all of that evidence. And as I'm talking to this guy, I'm looking right at Mr. Cummins. And we can talk about it more a little bit later, but he was, I think, extremely helpful because of what we had to disprove with that tow truck driver, I have to say. But in closing, I turned to Mr. Cummins and I said, Mr. Cummins, things work in mysterious ways. And you could almost hear an amen. And I said, but I'm so darn glad you're sitting in this jury because we're going to need your common sense here. And he looked right at me and gave me a big old smile and shook his head like, don't worry, I got you. And, so establishing that rapport with him at the individual level comes from talking to the jury, not the jury. It's how you present yourself, how your team works together, how you respect the judge, how you respect the juror's time, how prepared you are, how organized you are, consistency between the witnesses. I always made sure that there was I'm not talking about repeating the same thing, but some overlap in all of the witnesses' testimony, right? Where one sort of reinforced the other, right? So especially with the before and after witnesses. And, between flexibility and credibility, it kind of leaves you with this trusting the jury.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but this is one where we really had to, because things came up last minute. There were points being made in closing argument that how can they be making that argument? And we just got to trust that they're seeing through it. And that, at a personal level, they understand it. As a group, they'll reinforce that understanding and come through. And gosh, they did.